Why does silence feel heaviest right before it shatters? 1,200 Marines stood frozen, not moving, not breathing, just watching. The parade ground stretched endlessly in every direction, dust hanging in the Virginia air like smoke from a battlefield that hadn't happened yet. At the center of it all, dress white stained with red clay, a man lay unconscious. An admiral. His hat rolled slowly across the ceremonial dirt, spinning like a coin that hadn't decided which way to fall. Captain Ara Bren stood over him, hands clasped behind her back, spine straight, military bearing perfect. But her right knuckles throbbed with a pain that felt distant, unreal, like it belonged to someone else. Her left cheek burned where his palm had cracked across her face 30 seconds earlier. 30 seconds. That's all it took to end a career, to shatter regulations, to become the kind of legend whispered in barracks when officers weren't listening. Her voice, when it finally came, carried across that impossible silence with the clarity of a last transmission before the radio goes dead. I will accept the consequences. No one moved. History had just fractured and every witness knew it. But this moment, this precise convergence of honor and violence, hadn't started here. It had been building for 21 years, building in the quiet spaces between heartbeats, in the darkness where promises are made to ghosts. It started 4,000 miles away, in a city that would teach an 11-year-old girl what sacrifice truly costs. Fallujah, November 2004. The television glowed blue in the darkened living room. Ara sat cross-legged on the carpet, homework forgotten, watching footage of Marines moving through devastated streets. Dust hung thick. Gunfire crackled through the speakers. Her mother stood in the kitchen doorway, dish towel twisted in her hands, face pale as bone. The doorbell rang at 1900 hours, exactly. Ara would remember that precision forever. The military didn't do coincidence. Doorbells at 7 p.m. meant one thing, one terrible, final thing. 2 Marines stood on the porch in dress blues. The older one, a captain with gray at his temples, held a folded flag against his chest like it weighed more than the world. The younger gripped a manila envelope like it might dissolve in his hands. Neither man looked at her. They focused on her mother with the terrible compassion of messengers who had delivered this news before, who would deliver it again. Mrs. Brennick, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, has entrusted me to express his deep regret. The words blurred, official phrases, honorable service, combat operations, hostile action. The flag passed from the captain's hands to her mother's, 13 folds, 50 stars, the physical weight of a life compressed into cotton and symbolism. Ara's mother collapsed into a chair. The younger Marine reached out, steadied her with hands that shook just slightly. The captain knelt, eye level with Ara, and his voice dropped to something almost gentle. Your father was the finest Marine I ever served with. He saved his whole convoy, took position on a rooftop, held off enemy fire for 40 minutes while his brothers got to safety. He never broke, never ran. The captain's jaw worked. You understand what that means? Ara nodded, but she didn't, not really, not yet. He asked me to tell you something if anything ever happened. The captain's eyes held something that looked like grief and respect mixed together. He said, tell her, hold steady, breathe, squeeze, said you'd understand. She did understand, those 3 words, the fundamentals her father had taught her during weekend trips to the range back when she was 8 and the rifle was almost as tall as her body. Shooting wasn't about strength, it was about control, patience, breath, discipline. Hold steady, breathe, squeeze. The captain stood, rendered a salute so sharp it could have drawn blood, and walked back into the November night. The door closed. The house filled with the sound of her mother's weeping, raw and endless and broken. Ara walked upstairs to her room, closed the door, sat on the edge of her bed in the darkness. The Purple Heart ceremony would come later, the burial at Arlington with full honors, the 21-gun salute that would echo off headstones like the world ending in intervals. But in that moment, alone with the silence, 11-year-old Ara Bren made a promise to a ghost 4,000 miles away. She would finish what he started. She would never cry again. 21 years later, some promises become steel. The rifle lay across her cleaning mat in perfect geometry, disassembled down to springs and firing pins. An M40A5 sniper system, 42 inches of precision engineering. Weight, 16.5 pounds with scope. Effective range, 1,000 meters. Maximum range in the right hands under the right conditions, with the right breathing and the cold mathematics of ballistics aligned like prayer. Considerably farther. Ara's hands moved through the cleaning ritual with unconscious grace. 10,000 repetitions had taught her body what her mind no longer needed to supervise. Carbon scraper along the bolt face. Bore snake through the barrel, smooth and patient. CLP oil applied in exact measures. Each component inspected, judged, approved. The Schmidt and Bender scope got special attention. Glass this pure demanded respect. Around her, the armory buzzed with controlled chaos. A scout sniper platoon preparing for inspection. Younger Marines cleaned their weapons with varying degrees of competence. A corporal struggled with a stuck ejector pin. A lance corporal reassembled his rifle upside down. Hadn't noticed yet. Ara watched peripherally, cataloging mistakes, planning corrections. Leadership meant catching failures before they became casualties. Captain Bren. She glanced up. Lieutenant Grayson Aldridge stood at attention, dress uniform immaculate, expression carefully neutral. 26 years old. Annapolis graduate. 3 years in the fleet and still young enough to believe regulations mattered more than results. He'd learn. At ease, Lieutenant, what do you need? Aldridge shifted weight. Uncomfortable, bad sign. Ma'am, you've been requested for special assignment. Ceremonial detail. Medal of Honor ceremony 3 days from now at Norfolk. Ara's hand stilled on the rifle. Ceremonial duty. I run a scout sniper platoon, Aldridge. We don't do parade drills. Yes, ma'am. The request came from Admiral Corbett's office. Specifically, he asked for you by name. The name hit like a punch to the solar plexus. Ara kept her face blank, but her pulse spiked. Admiral Randolph Corbett, Surface Warfare Commander, 30 years of service, Navy Cross recipient, and the man who had ended her sniper career 2 years ago with the stroke of a pen and a pack of lies. Did the Admiral provide justification for this request? Aldridge's jaw tightened. He knew the history. Everyone in the chain of command knew. No, ma'am. Just said he needed experienced leadership for the color guard. High-profile event, press coverage. Ara returned her attention to the rifle, threading the barrel back into the receiver with absolute precision. Click, seated, locked. Tell the Admiral's office I'll be honored to serve. Ma'am, Aldridge hesitated, unusual for him. Sergeant Major Graves asked me to relay a message. He said, and I quote, "This smells like an ambush, and ambushes only work if you walk into them blind." Tell Graves I appreciate his concern. Tell him I'm walking in with both eyes open. She lifted the completed rifle, sighted down the barrel toward the far wall. Perfect, like always. Dismissed. Aldridge saluted, turned on his heel, walked away. The armory door closed with a metallic clang that echoed longer than it should have. Ara set down the rifle and opened her footlocker. Beneath folded uniforms and field manuals sat a small wooden box, scarred and water-stained. She lifted the lid. Inside, resting on faded velvet, lay her father's Purple Heart. The bronze profile of George Washington caught the fluorescent light. The ribbon's purple and white edges had dulled with age. Beside it, wrapped in cloth, sat his dog tags. Gunnery Sergeant Thaddeus Brennick, USMC, blood type O-positive, Protestant. The medal still bore scratches from 21 years of wear, combat, training, life compressed into stamped steel. She lifted the tags, let them dangle. The chain was too short for her neck now. She wore her own tags. But sometimes, late at night when the barracks fell silent, she held these. Felt the connection across death and time and all the distance that separated the living from the dead. 3 more days, Dad, she whispered. Then we'll see what the Admiral really wants. What do you do when the person who destroyed you asks you to stand at attention? The Medal of Honor ceremony unfolded with the precision of a military operation, which Ara supposed it was. Flags snapped in the coastal wind. Dignitaries filled the front rows. Press cameras positioned for optimal angles. The recipient, a Navy corpsman who'd saved 8 Marines under fire in Afghanistan, stood ramrod straight in dress blues that looked like they'd been painted on. Ara commanded the color guard, 4 Marines hand-selected, perfect in every detail. They'd practiced the movements until muscle memory eliminated thought. Present arms, order arms, the choreography of honor. Admiral Corbett stood on the platform, 10 feet away, delivering remarks about courage and sacrifice with the practiced ease of someone who'd given this speech 100 times. His voice carried authority. His uniform displayed 30 years of ribbons and medals. His presence commanded respect. But Ara knew what those cameras didn't capture, what the audience couldn't see. 2 years ago, she'd been the best sniper in her battalion. Consistent, deadly accurate, disciplined. She'd completed 3 deployments, 17 confirmed kills, 0 civilian casualties, the kind of record that got you noticed, promoted, respected. Then came the incident in Helmand Province. A compound, high-value target. Intel said he was alone. The shot was clean, 1,000 meters, wind negligible, target confirmed. She'd squeezed the trigger. The bullet flew true. But the intelligence was wrong. There'd been a child in the room, 6 years old. Wrong place, wrong time, the kind of tragedy that happens in war no matter how careful you are. The investigation cleared her. Rules of engagement followed. Intel failure, not operator failure. But Admiral Corbett had other ideas. He'd written a report, claimed she'd been reckless, ignored protocol, that her aggressive tactics had endangered civilian lives. The report was fiction, pure fabrication, but it carried an admiral's signature. Her sniper career ended just like that. They transferred her to training command, still a captain, still a Marine, but no longer trusted with the rifle that had defined her life. Now standing at attention while Corbett spoke about honor and sacrifice, Ara felt something cold settle in her chest. Not anger, not rage, something quieter, more dangerous. Patience. The ceremony concluded. The corpsman received his medal. The audience applauded. Protocol dictated that the color guard would retire the colors, then stand down. Simple, clean, professional. But as Ara's team began the movements, Admiral Corbett stepped down from the platform, walked directly toward her. His smile was politician perfect. His eyes were shark cold. Captain Bren, a word. It wasn't a request. She nodded to her second-in-command, stepped aside with the Admiral. They moved away from the crowd, toward the edge of the parade ground where press couldn't overhear. Wind tugged at their uniforms. Somewhere, a flagpole's rope clinked against metal in rhythmic percussion. "You executed that beautifully, Captain," Corbett said. His voice was smooth, practiced. "I'm glad you could participate." "Thank you, sir. I know we've had our differences. The Helmand incident was unfortunate, but I want you to know there were no hard feelings on my end. I was simply following regulations." Ara said nothing. Silence was safer than the words building behind her teeth. Corbett continued, mistaking her quiet for acceptance. "In fact, I'm considering recommending you for a new assignment. Instructor position at Quantico. Permanent. Good for your career. Get you back into the community's good graces." "I have a platoon, sir." "Platoons come and go, Captain. Careers are what matter. You're a smart woman. You understand how things work." He leaned closer, voice dropping. "Sometimes we have to make compromises, Admit when we've made mistakes, show contrition, then doors open again. And there it was, the real reason for this ceremony, the actual purpose of this conversation. He wanted her to apologize, to admit fault for an incident that wasn't her fault, to validate his lies in exchange for career advancement. "Is that what you did, sir?" Ara asked quietly. "When you fabricated that report, did you compromise, show contrition?" Corbett's smile vanished like someone had flipped a switch. His expression went from polished politician to something much harder, much meaner. "Watch your tone, Captain." "I'm watching everything, sir. Have been for 2 years. You need to understand something." His voice dropped to a hiss. "I ended your sniper career with one report. I can end your entire career just as easily. One word from me, and you're teaching ROTC at some community college. Is that what you want?" "What I want," Ara said slowly, "is for you to tell the truth." Corbett's hand moved faster than she expected. The slap cracked across her cheek with enough force to snap her head sideways. Pain bloomed hot and immediate. Her vision sparked white. Around them 1,200 Marines stood watching. The entire ceremony, every witness, every camera. The Admiral had just struck a subordinate officer in front of the entire fleet. Ara straightened slowly, turned her head back to face him. Her cheek burned, her ears rang, but her voice when it came was steady as bedrock. "Sir, I need you to step back." "Or what?" Corbett's face was flushed red now, rage breaking through decades of polish. "You'll file a complaint. Who do you think they'll believe? A decorated admiral or a washed-up sniper with a civilian casualty on her record?" Something in Ara went very still, very cold, like the moment before a trigger breaks, like the heartbeat before irrevocable action. "Step back, sir." "Make me." Later, the Marine Corps would spend months investigating what happened next. Lawyers would parse regulations. Psychiatrists would evaluate mental states. Ethicists would debate the boundaries of justified response. But in that moment, standing on Virginia dirt with her father's voice echoing across 21 years, "Hold steady. Breathe. Squeeze," Captain Ara Bren made a decision. Her right fist moved with the precision of 10,000 hours of training. Not wild, not reckless, controlled, measured, exact. It caught Admiral Corbett square on the jaw. His head snapped back. His legs buckled. He dropped like a puppet with cut strings, unconscious before he hit the ground. Silence crashed over the parade ground like a tsunami. 1,200 Marines frozen. Cameras recording. History fracturing in real time. Ara stood over him, hands clasped behind her back, spine straight, professional, composed, as if she just completed a drill movement instead of ending her career. "I will accept the consequences," she said quietly. And the world, for just a moment, held its breath. Have you ever noticed how the truth takes longer to arrive than the lie? They arrested her, of course. Military police. Zip ties instead of handcuffs, but the message was clear. Captain Ara Bren was being taken into custody for assault on a superior officer. The crowd dispersed in shocked whispers. The Medal of Honor recipient stood forgotten, his moment stolen by something much more dramatic, much more destructive. Ara didn't resist, didn't speak, just walked between the MPs with the same military bearing she'd maintained her entire career. Back straight, eyes forward, dignity intact even as everything else crumbled. They put her in a holding cell at the base brig. Concrete walls, metal bench, a toilet in the corner that smelled like industrial cleaner and despair. She sat down, back against the wall, and waited. The first hour passed in silence. The second brought Sergeant Major Graves. He stood outside the cell, arms crossed, expression unreadable. 58 years old, 36 years in the Corps, he'd seen everything, survived everything. Nothing surprised him anymore. "Well," he said finally, "that was something." "Yes, Sergeant Major." "You know what you've done." Yes, Sergeant Major. Do you regret it? Ara considered the question, ran through the moment again in her mind. The slap, the rage, the cold calculation that had preceded her fist. She thought about her father, about 21 years of keeping promises, about the 11-year-old girl who'd sworn to finish what he started. No, Sergeant Major, I don't. Graves nodded slowly. Good, because regret won't help you now. What happens next? That's going to be complicated. I understand. Do you? He stepped closer to the bars. The Admiral is claiming you attacked him without provocation, says he was offering you a career opportunity and you responded with violence. His version makes you sound unstable, dangerous, unfit for service. And my version? Your version is that he struck you first, that you acted in self-defense. Graves paused. Problem is, there were 1,200 witnesses. Some saw it clearly, some didn't. The Admiral's got 30 years of credibility. You've got a civilian casualty report with his signature on it. Ara's jaw tightened. So it's his word against mine. Not exactly. Graves pulled a small device from his pocket, a cell phone. Turns out one of the color guard Marines had his personal phone on him, against regulations, but kids these days. He tapped the screen. He recorded the whole ceremony, including your conversation with the Admiral. Hope flickered, dangerous, fragile. The audio's clear, Graves continued. Every word, including the Admiral admitting he fabricated your report, including him striking you, including you warning him 3 times to step back. Where's the Marine now? Protective custody. The video's already been sent to JAG, the Commandant's office, and about 6 different news organizations. Graves smiled grimly. The Admiral's lawyers tried to suppress it. Too late, it's everywhere. Ara closed her eyes, relief and dread mixing together into something she couldn't name. What happens now? Now court-martial, yours and his. Simultaneous investigations. The Admiral for assault, falsifying official reports and conduct unbecoming. You for striking a superior officer. Even in self-defense, you broke regulations. I know. But here's the thing. Graves leaned against the bars. The Corps is watching. The public is watching. And everyone's asking the same question. What do you do when the system protects the powerful and punishes the honest? You trust the system to correct itself. Do you really? Ara opened her eyes, met his gaze. My father trusted the system, served it, died for it. I have to believe that means something. Your father, Graves said quietly, would be proud of you, not for throwing the punch, for standing there 21 years refusing to break. That takes a different kind of courage. The hours that followed blurred together. Lawyers, investigators, official statements repeated until the words lost meaning. Ara told the truth, simple, direct, unflinching. Yes, she'd struck the Admiral. Yes, she'd known the consequences. No, she didn't regret it. The investigation moved faster than anyone expected. The video evidence was damning, clear, irrefutable. Within 72 hours, Admiral Corbett was relieved of command and placed under house arrest. His 30-year career ended in disgrace. His Navy Cross meant nothing against video proof of assault and fraud. But Ara's fate remained uncertain. The regulations were clear. Striking a superior officer was grounds for court-martial and discharge. Self-defense was a mitigating factor, but not necessarily exculpatory. The Marine Corps had to decide whether justice or regulations took precedence. She spent 6 days in the brig. 6 days of silence and waiting and wondering if she destroyed everything her father had died for. On the 7th day, they released her. No charges filed. The Commandant himself had intervened, ruled that prosecuting a Marine for defending herself after being assaulted by a superior officer would undermine Corps values more than the punch itself ever could. Ara walked out of the brig into morning sunlight that felt impossibly bright. Graves waited by his truck, arms crossed, expression still unreadable. "You're free," he said, "technically." "What does that mean?" "Means you're not being court-martialed, but you're also not exactly popular with the old guard. They see you as a problem, someone who doesn't respect the chain of command." "I respect the chain of command. I just don't respect corruption." "Some people can't tell the difference." Graves opened the truck door. "Get in, we're going somewhere." "Where?" "You'll see." Sometimes the hardest battle is the one that comes after. The truck rumbled through Quantico's back roads, past training ranges and barracks and obstacle courses where new Marines learned what they were made of. Ara watched the landscape scroll by, feeling disconnected from it all, like she was watching her own life from a distance. Graves drove in silence. The radio played classic rock at low volume. The world continued like nothing had changed, but everything had changed. They pulled up to the rifle range, empty this time of day. Targets downrange fluttered in the wind, waiting for bullets that wouldn't come. "Why are we here?" Ara asked. "Because you need to remember something." Graves killed the engine. "Come on." They walked to the firing line, the familiar smell of gun oil and brass and earth. Ara's hands moved automatically, muscle memory preparing for a weapon that wasn't there. Graves reached into the truck bed, pulled out a case, opened it. Inside lay her M40A5, the rifle they'd taken when they ended her sniper career, the rifle she'd cleaned 10,000 times, the rifle that had been an extension of her body. "How did you?" "Called in some favors, figured you'd earned it back." Ara lifted the rifle. The weight felt right, perfect, like coming home after a long deployment. She checked the chamber, clear, ran her hands over the stock, the scope, the barrel. Everything was exactly as she'd left it. "There's a target at 1,000 meters, Graves said. "Wind's about 5 miles per hour northeast. Think you can still make the shot?" Ara didn't answer, just moved to the firing line, dropped to prone position. The rifle settled against her shoulder. The scope came to her eye, muscle memory taking over thought. Downrange, the target wavered in the heat shimmer. 1,000 meters. A shot she'd made hundreds of times. A shot that had defined her career. A shot that had ended with a child's death that wasn't her fault but would haunt her forever. "Hold steady," Graves said softly behind her. Ara's breathing slowed. 4 counts in, hold, 4 counts out. "Breathe." The crosshairs settled on center mass. The world reduced to mathematics and faith, to fundamentals that never lied. "Squeeze." The trigger broke clean. The rifle recoiled. The bullet flew. "Silence." Then downrange, the target pinged. Center mass, perfect. Ara chambered another round, fired again, another hit, and another. 5 shots, 5 perfect impacts, like she'd never stopped, like the 2 years of exile had been a bad dream. She cleared the rifle, stood up. Her hands were steady, her breathing calm, but something inside her chest felt like it had finally unclenched after years of holding tight. "You're still the best," Graves said. "They can't take that from you." "They already did." "No, they took your position, your assignment, but they didn't take your skill, your discipline, your father's legacy." He paused. "You know what the hardest part of being a leader is?" "What?" "Knowing when to break the rules. Knowing when the right thing and the legal thing aren't the same thing, and having the courage to choose right anyway." Ara looked at him. "You think I did the right thing?" "I think you did the only thing. That Admiral spent 2 years destroying you because you threatened his ego, because you were better at your job than he ever was at his. And when the system failed to stop him, you stopped him yourself. At the cost of my career." "Your career isn't over," Graves smiled slightly. "Turns out people noticed what happened, real leaders, the kind who care more about integrity than politics. You've got options now, good ones." "Like what?" Like running the scout sniper school at Quantico, like training the next generation, like passing forward what your father taught you. The words hit harder than expected. Training, teaching, legacy. Hold steady, breathe, squeeze. They want me to teach. They want you to lead. There's a difference. Graves handed her a folder. Official orders, effective immediately. You're running the program your way, no interference, no political games, just training Marines to be the best. Ara opened the folder. The orders were real, signed by the commandant himself. Major Ara Bren. They'd promoted her. I don't understand, she said quietly. After everything, why? Because the Corps needs people who won't compromise when it matters. Because 17 other soldiers came forward after your story broke. 17 people the Admiral had destroyed over the years, all of them telling the same story, and all of them finding the courage to speak because you showed them it was possible. 17 people, 17 careers destroyed, 17 lives upended by one man's corruption. And it had taken a single punch to finally bring him down. What happens to him? Court-martial starts next month. The evidence is overwhelming. He'll be convicted, stripped of rank, imprisoned. Everything he built for 30 years gone. Graves paused. But that's not your burden anymore. Your job now is to build something better, to make sure the next generation doesn't have to fight the battles you fought. Ara looked down at the rifle in her hands, at the scope that had shown her targets 1,000 meters away, at the trigger that required 4 pounds of pressure to break, at the stock that had absorbed 10,000 rounds of recoil. This was her father's legacy, not revenge, not rage, but discipline, standards, the fundamentals that separated warriors from weapons. When do I start? Today, your first class reports at 1400 hours, 20 students, all of them hand-picked, all of them motivated. What do I tell them? Tell them the truth, that being a sniper isn't about killing, it's about discipline, judgment, making the hard choice when everyone's watching, and living with the consequences. 3 months later, the rifle range echoed with controlled fire. 20 students lay prone, rifles settled, breathing synchronized. Ara walked the line, watching form, correcting mistakes before they became habits. A corporal's elbow position was too high. A sergeant's breathing pattern was irregular. Small things, details. The difference between a hit and a miss at distances where millimeters mattered. Corporal Hayes, Ara said quietly, drop your elbow 2 inches. The corporal adjusted, fired, downrange the target pinged. Better again. The training continued through the morning. Fundamentals, breath control, trigger discipline, the basics that every sniper needed before they ever took a life-or-death shot. Ara moved between students, her voice calm, her corrections precise, her standards uncompromising. At 1100 hours, she called a break. The students gathered around, sitting in the dirt, drinking water, waiting for whatever came next. This was when the real teaching happened, not on the firing line but in these quiet moments between shots. Anyone know why we spend so much time on fundamentals? Ara asked. A lance corporal raised his hand. Because they're the foundation, ma'am. Everything builds from them. True, but incomplete. Ara looked across the group. We drill fundamentals because in the moment of decision, when everything is chaos, when your heart is pounding and your hands are shaking and the target is moving and civilians are nearby and your spotter is screaming wind calculations, the fundamentals are all you have. Your training, your discipline, your breath. She paused. I'm going to tell you something they don't teach in the manual. Being a sniper means carrying weight that doesn't show on any scale. Every target you engage, every decision you make, that stays with you. Forever. The hits and the misses. The lives you save and the lives you end. All of it becomes part of who you are. The students listened, silent, serious. 2 years ago, I took a shot in Helmand Province. High-value target. Intel said he was alone. The shot was clean, perfect fundamentals, everything by the book. Ara's voice stayed steady. But the intelligence was wrong. There was a child in the room, wrong place, wrong time. The investigation cleared me, but that doesn't change what happened. A corporal spoke up cautious. "Ma'am, that wasn't your fault." "No, but it was my responsibility. Every time you pull that trigger, you own the outcome, good or bad, right or wrong. That's the burden. That's what separates us from people who just point and shoot." She looked at each student in turn. "Your job isn't to be fearless. It's to be disciplined, to follow your training even when everything screams to panic, to make the hard call and live with it, and to never, ever compromise your integrity, not for career advancement, not for political pressure, not for anything." "What if the system fails us, ma'am?" another student asked. "What if leadership is corrupt?" Ara thought about Admiral Corbett, about the parade ground, about the moment her fist had ended 30 years of lies. "Then you document everything. You follow the chain of command. You exhaust every proper channel." She paused. "And if all that fails, you stand your ground anyway, because integrity isn't about convenience. It's about who you are when no one's watching, when it costs you everything." The students absorbed this, processing, understanding that their instructor wasn't just teaching them to shoot, she was teaching them to be something more. "Back to the line," Ara said. "Next drill, moving targets at 1,200 meters." The afternoon wore on, shots fired, targets hit, skills developed incrementally, patiently, the way excellence always builds. By 1600 hours, the students were exhausted but better, measurably improved. Ara secured her rifle, walked back toward the compound buildings. Graves waited by the armory, arms crossed, expression thoughtful. "Good session today, Captain. The kids are learning." "They're motivated, that helps." Graves pulled an envelope from his pocket. "This came for you. Official correspondence from Headquarters Marine Corps." Ara's stomach tightened. Official correspondence could mean anything. Awards, reprimands, new orders. She opened the envelope carefully, pulled out the single sheet of paper. It was a promotion order. Effective immediately, Captain Ara Bren was promoted to Major, United States Marine Corps. The order cited exceptional leadership under adverse conditions and commitment to the highest standards of honor and integrity. She stared at the paper, not quite believing it. After everything, the assault, the hearing, the media storm, they were promoting her. "Congratulations, Major," Graves said. "Well deserved." "I didn't ask for this." "That's probably why you got it. The Corps needs leaders who care more about the mission than the rank." He extended his hand. "Your father would be proud, so am I." The handshake was firm, warm, carrying decades of shared understanding. Marines who knew what it meant to serve, to sacrifice, to keep going when everything said to stop. That evening, Ara drove to Arlington National Cemetery. The grounds were quiet, visitors sparse as dusk approached. She walked the familiar path to Section 60, where the recent fallen rested in perfect rows, then further back to the older sections where warriors from Iraq and Afghanistan and earlier conflicts slept beneath white marble. She found her father's headstone easily, had been here hundreds of times. The inscription was simple: name, rank, dates of birth and death, the Marine Corps emblem. Words couldn't capture what he'd been, what he'd given, but they tried. Ara knelt, pulled the promotion letter from her pocket. She tucked it against the base of the headstone, held by a small stone to keep it from blowing away. "Mission accomplished, Dad," she whispered. "Admiral Corbett is facing court-martial. 17 families will get answers. The Corps is better because you taught me never to quit." She placed her hand flat against the cold marble, feeling the connection across death and time. "I made Major today, not because I wanted it, because I earned it the same way you taught me to earn everything, through discipline, through honor, through refusing to surrender ground that matters. I'm training the next generation now, teaching them what you taught me. Hold steady. Breathe, squeeze. They'll pass it forward. Your legacy continues. Through me, through them. Through every Marine who learns that courage isn't about fearlessness. It's about doing what's right when everything screams to run. The sun dropped below the horizon. Shadows lengthened. Somewhere in the distance, a bugler played taps, that haunting melody that honored the fallen and reminded the living that service continues beyond any individual life. Ara stood, rendered a final salute, and walked back toward her vehicle. Tomorrow there would be more training, more students, more moments to pass forward the wisdom of warriors who came before. The mission continued, because the mission always continued. 6 months later, Major Ara Bren's Scout Sniper Platoon deployed to Syria. Counter-ISIS operations, high-risk overwatch missions protecting Army and Kurdish forces, the kind of work that demanded absolute precision and uncompromising discipline. On a rooftop in Raqqa, 900 yards from a convoy moving through hostile territory, Ara settled behind her M40A5 and scanned for threats. Summer heat made distance measurements uncertain, wind variable, civilian presence complicating target identification. Through her scope she spotted movement, a figure with an RPG preparing to engage the convoy, clear threat, but positioned near a building with civilians visible through windows. The shot was technically possible, but the margin for error was razor thin. Her spotter, Corporal Santos, called wind and distance. 900 yards, wind 6 miles per hour, 2 o'clock, target stationary, civilians at risk if you miss. Ara calculated, breathed, remembered every lesson, every fundamental, every promise made to the living and the dead. "I have the shot," she said quietly. Cleared hot. Hold steady. The rifle settled into her shoulder, became an extension of her body. Breathe, 4 counts in, hold, 4 counts out. The world reduced to crosshairs and mathematics. Squeeze. The trigger broke clean. The rifle recoiled. The bullet flew true. 900 yards of arc and precision and faith in fundamentals that never lied. The target dropped. The RPG fell unfired. The convoy rolled past, 11 American soldiers continuing home alive, because a Marine on a rooftop had done her job with absolute discipline. "Confirmed," Santos said. "Target down, convoy clear." Ara didn't celebrate, didn't speak, just chambered another round, scanned for additional threats, and continued the mission, because that's what Marines did. They held ground. They protected their brothers and sisters. They finished what they started. Later, in the relative safety of the forward operating base, she pulled out a small notebook and made an entry in her personal log. Not official, not for any report, just a record for herself. Syria deployment day 47, successful overwatch, convoy protected, target neutralized at 900 yards, Dad's fundamentals continue to work, hold steady, breathe, squeeze, the mission continues, always. She closed the notebook, secured it in her pack, and prepared for the next operation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats, new moments where discipline and training would mean the difference between life and death. But tonight, on a rooftop half a world away from that Virginia parade ground where everything had changed, Major Ara Bren allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. She'd kept her promises, honored her father's memory, stood her ground when power demanded surrender. The silence that had lasted 21 years had finally ended, not with rage or vengeance, but with truth spoken by 1,000 voices who'd found courage to stand witness. Justice was slow but inevitable. Honor demanded patience but rewarded persistence. And somewhere in Arlington, beneath white marble and American soil, Gunnery Sergeant Thaddeus Bren rested easy, knowing his daughter had learned the lessons well. Hold steady through the storm. Breathe through the fear. Squeeze when the moment demands action. 3 simple rules that governed everything from marksmanship to life itself. The mission continued. It always would, because that's what Marines did. They finished the fight. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts.